Nowadays, lot of information is given about nuts on internet and somewhere else. These information is given by the police officers who have become the health gurus, or lawyers who have become the health gurus, CAs, even spiritual babas are now becoming health gurus and health doctors and giving lot of information. Most of the information is AI generated or cut and paste from somewhere. Because of this, you are confused whom to believe, whom not to believe. All this information, rather than benefiting you, is harming you. This confusion is about what nuts are good, what nuts are bad, whether to take the nuts in dry form or in solid form, whether to remove the coat of the nut or eat it as a whole. At the end, I will give you 7 best nuts which are healthy and you can eat them.
Helseform Fitness.
First of all, we have to understand what makes a nut good and what makes a nut bad. Coming to the good nuts, some of the nuts have very low carbohydrate, those are good nuts, and some have very high protein, those are also considered good. Some of the nuts have very good fatty acids or good fats in it, especially omega-3 fatty acids. Directly, you won't get omega-3 fatty acids. Precursor of the omega-3 fatty acid, alpha linolenic acid, is present. It is not useful or it is not harmful compared to omega-6 fatty acids. And also, most of the nuts are rich in vitamins, minerals, and fiber. So, if a nut has all these qualities, it is considered as a very good nut. And coming to the bad nut, what makes a nut bad? When the nut is full of carbohydrate, when it is having high amount of carbohydrate, it is considered as a bad nut because carbohydrate in your body is converted into cholesterol and it will block your heart. It is converted into subcutaneous fat, it makes you fatter. Some of the carbohydrate is converted into belly fat or visceral fat. These are all the bad qualities of a nut. And also, one more bad quality of the nut is omega-6 fatty acids. When the nut is full of omega-6 fatty acids or when it is high in omega-6 fatty acids, it is considered as bad nut because it produces inflammation, body pains, joint pains, it ages you fast. So you have to remember what makes a nut good and what makes a nut bad before we further proceed into the video. Then how to select a good nut? Select a nut that is low in carbohydrate and select a nut that is low in omega-6 fatty acids. If these two things are low in a nut, you have to select such kind of nuts. And rest of the things, minerals, vitamins, proteins are good, and you will all the nuts have these properties. And coming to selecting the nuts, so I will give you details of each nut. So I have rated the nuts based on the rating of 3. Good nut, I will give the rating of 3. Bad nut, the rating will be 1. Okay. And what is considered as good nut? When a nut is rated 3, it is low in carbohydrate, low in omega-6 fatty acids, and high in omega-3 fatty acid. When a nut is rated 1, it is high in carbohydrate and high in omega-6 fatty acids and low in omega-3 fatty acids. So consider, when the nut has the rating of 3, it is good, and when the nut has rating of 1 or 2, it is bad. I will give you the values. These values are given for 100 grams of edible portion. If I say this nut contains carbohydrate of 50 grams, it means if you take 100 grams of edible portion of the nut, in that 50 grams is carbohydrate and the rest of the 50 grams is other things in the nut. Okay, now we will look into each nut by nut. First nut is almond. Almond is considered as good nut. I have given the rating of 3 because it contains low carbohydrate. The carbohydrate present in almond is about 10.5 grams per 100 grams of edible portion. So it is considered as good nut. Coming to the betel nut. Betel nut is a nut where our old people will eat the nut along with the pan. So that is a betel nut. The betel nut is considered as rating 2 because it contains small higher amount of carbohydrate. But the thing is, you will not be taking betel nuts in higher quantities. You will be taking the betel nut in lower quantities. That's the reason there is no harm in taking the betel nut. However, the carbohydrate present in betel nut is 47.2 grams per 100 grams of edible portion. Next one is Brazil nut. Brazil nut has the rating of 3 because it contains low carbohydrate. It contains only 5 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams of edible portion. Next nut, cashew. I have given the rating of 1. The reason is it has 26 grams of carbohydrate, and the problem with this nut is people tend to take in larger quantities. You can take it, but reduce the quantity very much, so it can be healthy. But it is considered as a bad nut because it contains 26 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams of edible portion. Coming to coconut fresh, when the coconut is fresh, when you want to consume it as nut, so it is considered as medium nut because it contains a carbohydrate of 13 grams. And the problem with this fresh coconut is you tend to take large amount of fresh coconut, so you have to reduce the quantity. If you can take this nut in lower quantities, that is healthy. And coming to the dry coconut I have given the rating of 2. The reason is dry coconut has the concentration of carbohydrate. It is about 18.5% of carbohydrate or 18.5 grams of carbohydrate. You can take this, but in smaller quantities. Normally people tend to take dry coconut in smaller quantities. And coming to the coconut tender, when the coconut is tender, it have only 6.3 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams of edible portion. So when the coconut is tender, what I mean by tender is when you drink the coconut water and whatever is left over, the tender coconut, that one you can take in plenty of quantities because it has very low carbohydrate. Next nut is hazelnut. Hazelnut is also good. I have given the rating of 3 because it contains only 7 grams of carbohydrate. Next nut is macadamia nut. Macadamia nut is also very healthy. It contains only 6 grams of carbohydrate. Coming to the peanuts, everyone's favorite. So peanuts I have given the rating of 1. The reason is it has 26 grams of carbohydrate. And the problem with this nut is people tend to take in larger quantities. You can take it, but reduce the quantity very much, so it can be healthy. But it is considered as a bad nut because it contains 26 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams of edible portion. Next one is pecans. Pecans are also very good nuts because it contains only 4 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams. You can take plenty of pecans. Pistachios. Pistachios are the favorites of women and also most of the kids like pistachios. Pistachios I have given the rating of 1 because it contains 16 grams of carbohydrates per 100 grams of edible portion. It is considered as bad nut. Coming to the walnut. Walnut is considered as the best nut because it is cheaper. It contains only 11 grams of carbohydrate, and the importance of walnut is it contains more of omega-3 fatty acids. I mean precursor of omega-3 fatty acids. So most of the fatty acids is not converted into omega-3, but still compared to all the nuts, the healthiest nut is walnut. You can take plenty of them. I have given the rating of 3. Coming to the water chestnut, it is available in 2 forms. Both forms are very bad. I have given the rating of 1. The reason is in the dry form it contains about 63% of carbohydrates. In the fresh form it contains 24% of carbohydrate. Both are not good for health. That's the reason I have given the rating of 1 for water chestnuts in any. Now we have known about the nutritive value of the nuts, and you can assess which nut is good and which nut is bad, and how to eat the nuts. So what is the best way to eat the nuts? First question you get is whether to eat the nut in dry form or soaked form. It is better to eat the nut in soaked form rather than dry form because when you soak it, water will enter into the nut and it is very easy for you to digest, and most of the nut will be absorbed into the body. When you tend to take dry nuts, what happens is when our digestive system will not able to reach the inner parts of the nut you have taken, it goes out as a waste on the next day. So that's the reason if you want to benefit completely out of a nut, take always soaked nuts. At least soak the nut for 1 to 2 hours before taking it. If you want to take it dry, if you like it, there is no problem, but it is better to take in the soaked form. Next question, everyone's favorite question. Someone says you should not be eating the seed coat of the nut. Someone says it is good to eat. The thing is, it is good to eat. Don't believe if someone says the coat of the almond is not good. Seed coat is very good. It is very nutritious. Tend to take the nuts as a whole rather than removing the coat and taking it. And coming to the quantity of nut, what quantity of nut you can take? If you are taking bad nuts, keep the quantity as low as possible. If you are taking the good nuts, you can take any amount of nuts. You can take 1 handful, 2 handfuls, 3 handfuls, or if you are feeling hungry, you can take more nuts. There is no problem in it. If you want me to give the list of best nuts, there are 7 best nuts: almond, brazil nut, coconut tender, hazelnut, walnut, pecan, macadamia nut. These are all the 7 best nuts anyone can take in any amount. This is Dr. Bharadwaj. I am health and fitness specialist at Helseform Fitness. If you have any doubt about the nut, enter in the comments. I will be addressing you promptly. Thank you.